Jordan Tice, thanks so much for being here today.
And it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you began playing music pretty early, and you come from a musical family, really kind of a uh, mom that planted the flag for bluegrass pretty early in the world of women in bluegrass. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how you grew up around music.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of my folks are great bluegrass musicians, and my mom was actually a professional bluegrass musician back in the late '70s, early '80s, and played in the first all-female bluegrass band, the Buffalo Gals, based out of Syracuse, New York. Um, and then kind of settled down and had a family, but there was always music around the house, and they were always playing local gigs on the weekend and having jam sessions and things. So it was a great environment to grow up in.
And so, this was a certain style of music. It sounds like initially when you began performing, when you kind of picked up the guitar, you weren't necessarily aiming to do bluegrass or even folk music. You were kind of in a different headspace then.
For sure, yeah. Was into rock and things that were on the radio, and then got more into like jazz and bluegrass kind of later in my, maybe around the age of 16, 17, after going to a bluegrass festival.
And then you did some professional I mean, you went to school for music, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, music composition.
Okay. And so, what were you listening to at that point in your life, growing up? What was formative other than sort of hearing the music around the house?
I mean, just kind of like everything. I feel like I've gone through a phase that basically has touched on any genre at any point. But at that point, I was really into maybe more guitar and composition kind of oriented music. I liked a lot of jazz, like Keith Jarrett and Pat Metheny and Miles Davis, as well as a lot of the people like Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer and Chris Thile that were doing the kind of progressive instrumental bluegrass thing. Um, but yeah, that's what I was into at that time. But since have gone through many many other phases.
And you have done, performing, bluegrass. You have performed alongside, people including, Steve Martin, who, we actually just talked last week to Allison Brown,
Oh yeah,
but you've also been a part of this bluegrass supergroup, Hawtail, so which has been mostly, I think, instrumental music, is that right?
that's correct.
And your own solo work early on has been a lot of instrumental music. So explain, if you can, just sort of what the appeal is of that, and then why you've shifted gears more recently to also having, vocal tracks in your releases.
Yeah, I mean it's funny, right? Almost concurrently with picking up a guitar for the first time came the impulse to write music. So as quick as I was learning how to play things on guitar, I was also coming up with little riffs and little kind of guitar pieces that were quite simple at first, and then kind of developed from there. And it's really not until I moved to Nat. I've always loved songs and listened. Like Bob Dylan has always probably been one of my very favorite musicians and other great songwriters. But it wasn't really until I moved to Nashville about 10 years ago that I got into songwriting.
Mm.
It's like something I always wanted to do, but couldn't really find my way in, I guess. But then it just kind of all started happening. Started cranking out songs when I moved to Nashville and was surrounded by an amazing community of songwriters.
Sure.
So Hawktail's always been instrumental and continues to be, but my solo output is song oriented these days.
And you mentioned Bob Dylan, so you cover a Dylan song on your new EP, also a Randy Newman song, Dayton, Ohio. You do Bob Dylan's "Trying to Get to Heaven."
hmm
What about those 2 artists in particular, it speaks to you, made you wanna cover them in your live performances and on this album?
I mean, I just love everything Dylan. It's almost hard to pinpoint. He has so many different phases and careers, and I feel like different ones have appealed to me at different points in my life. Um, and I just love, it's equally as interesting to me as the early stuff that's more widely known as the stuff that he did in the '90s. And I've always loved that song, "Trying to Get to Heaven." Um, and I played it live too, so it's kind of ready to go. And then Randy Newman kind of is interesting to me just because I love his lyrics and everything, but also a lot of his music and piano parts are really, he's really interesting on a musical level as well. So I've always enjoyed him for that. And especially a lot of the fingerstyle guitar stuff I do is kind of like ragtimey in a way. So
Mm,
there's kind of some crossover between the way he plays piano and then the kind of like ragtime music that I play on guitar. So it made for a
interesting.
nice adaptation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so we have a little clip of a original song that you wrote for this, EP called Mean Old World. Let's take a listen to it for a second.
The songs as the mean old world marches on.
So, a really lovely guitar playing there. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind that song?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those songs that it's kind of hard to pinpoint to an exact situation. It's just kind of I was moving out of a house and just kind of had like one of those kind of feelings of nostalgia and just kind of life moving forward against your will, and just kind of putting an end to kind of an era of sorts. And yeah, just kind of maybe that sentiment. I feel like I was kind of living in that sentiment, and then that song came out.
Yeah, well, it's a very, evocative and really beautiful song. So, what is it that, you're going to be performing at your St. Augustine show? Is it going to be stuff off the new EP? Are you going to be performing some of the instrumentals that you've done over the years, as part of the group? Or what should audiences expect?
Yeah, well, I will perform the new EP in its entirety. And I also should say that joining me for the show will be Paul Coert
Mm,
on bass, who's my bandmate in Hawtail. And he's just kind of played music on everything I've ever done, and one of my best friends. And um, he plays bass in the Punch Brothers and with Gillian Welch, so he's quite a esteemed bass player. So he'll be there. And he played on the EP, so we'll play the EP as well as things from my previous record, Motivational Speakeasy. And I should also mention that I'm currently deep in the throes of working on a brand new record that Paul's working on with me. So we'll be playing a bunch of new stuff as well.
excellent. Well, Jordan Tice, he performs as part of the Gamble Rogers concert series on the 22nd on Saturday. It's at the St. Augustine Waterworks on San Marco Avenue in St. Augustine, and we've got a link on our website. Jordan Tice, it's so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for doing this.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, and we'll be back in just a minute.